The American white pelican is a large aquatic soaring bird from the order Pelecaniformes. It breeds in interior North America, moving south and to the coasts, as far as Central America and South America, in winter. Taxonomy. The German naturalist Johann Friedrich G. Melland described the American white pelican in 1789. The scientific name means red-billed pelican, for the Latin term for a pelican, pelicanus, and erythrorhynchos, derived from the ancient Greek words erythros plus rhynchos. Description. The American white pelican rivals the trumpeter swan, with a similar overall length, as the longest bird native to North America. Both very large and plump, it has an overall length of about 50 to 70 in, courtesy of the huge beak, which measures 11.3 to 15.2 in males and 10.3 to 14.2 in females. It has a wingspan of about 95 to 120 in. The species also has the second largest average wingspan of any North American bird, after the California condor. This large wingspan allows the bird to easily use soaring flight for migration. Body weight can range between 7.7 and 30 pounds, although typically these birds average between 11 and 20 pounds. One mean body mass of 15.4 pounds was reported. Another study found mean weights to be somewhat lower than expected, with 11 males averaging 13.97 pounds and 6 females averaging 10.95 pounds. Amongst standard measurements, the wing chord measures 20 to 26.7 in and the tarsus measures 3.9 to 5.4 in long. The plumage is almost entirely bright white, except the black primary and secondary remiges, which are hardly visible except in flight. From early spring until after breeding has finished in mid-late summer, the breast feathers have a yellowish hue. After molting into the eclipsed plumage, the upper head often has a gray hue, as blackish feathers grow between the small wispy white crest. The bill is huge and flat on the top, with a large throat sac below, and, in the breeding season, is vivid orange in color as of the iris. The bare skin around the eye and the feet. In the breeding season, there is a laterally flattened horn on the upper bill, located about 1/3 the bill's length behind the tip. This is the only one of the H species of pelican to have a bill horn. The horn is shed after the birds have mated and laid their eggs. Outside the breeding season, the bare parts become duller in color, with the naked facial skinned yellow and the bill, pouch, and feet an orangey flesh color. Apart from the difference in size, males and females look exactly alike. Immature birds have light gray plumage with darker brownish nape and remiges. The bare parts are dull gray. Chicks are naked at first, then grow white down feathers all over, before molting to the immature plumage. Distribution and ecology. American white pelicans nest in colonies of several hundred pairs on islands in remote brackish and freshwater lakes of inland North America. The most northerly nesting colony can be found on islands in the rapids of the Slave River between Fort Fitzgerald, Alberta, and Fort Smith, Northwest Territories. About 10 to 20% of the population uses Gunnison Island in the Great Basin's Great Salt Lake as a nesting ground. The southernmost colonies are in southwestern Ontario and northeastern California. Nesting colonies exist as far south as Albany County in southern Wyoming. They winter on the Pacific and Gulf of Mexico coasts from central California and Florida south to Panama, and along the Mississippi River at least as far north as St. Louis, Missouri. In winter quarters, they are rarely found on the open seashore, preferring estuaries and lakes. They cross deserts and mountains but avoid the open ocean on migration. But stray birds, often blown off course by hurricanes, have been seen in the Caribbean Caribbean. In Colombian territory it has been recorded first on February 22, 1997, on the San André Island, where they might have been swept by Hurricane Marco, which passed nearby in November 1996. Since then, there have also been a few observations likely to pertain to this species on the South American mainland, e.g. at Calamar. Wild American white pelicans may live for more than 16 years. In captivity, the record lifespan stands at over 34 years. Food and feeding. Unlike the brown pelican, the American white pelican does not dive for its food. Instead, it catches its prey while swimming. Each bird eats more than 4 pounds of food a day, mostly fish such as cypriniformes like common carp, Lahontantuy chub and shiners, perciformes like Sacramento perch, yellow perch, salmoniformes like rainbow trout, siluriformes, and jackfish. Other animals eaten by these birds are crayfish and amphibians, and sometimes larval salamanders. Birds nesting on saline lakes, where food is scarce, will travel great distances to better feeding grounds. American white pelicans like to come together in groups of a dozen or more birds to feed, as they can thus cooperate and corral fish to one another. When this is not easily possible, for example in deep water, where fish can escape by diving out of reach, they prefer to forage alone. But the birds also steal food on occasion from other birds, a practice known as kleptoparasitism. White pelicans are known to steal fish from other pelicans, gulls and cormorants from the surface of the water and, in one case, from a great blue heron, while both large birds were in flight. Reproduction as noted above. They are colonial breeders, with up to 5,000 pairs per site. The birds arrive on the breeding grounds in March or April. Nesting starts between early April and early June. During the breeding season, both males and females develop a pronounced bump on the top of the large beaks. This conspicuous growth is shed by the end of the breeding season. The nest is a shallow depression scraped in the ground. In some twigs, sticks, reeds or similar debris have been gathered. After about 1 week of courtship and nest building, the female lays a clutch of usually 2 or 3 eggs, sometimes just 1, sometimes up to 6. Both parents incubate for about 1 month. The young leave the nest 3 to 4 weeks after hatching. At this point, usually only one young per nest has survived. They spend the following month in a creche or pod, molting into immature plumage and eventually learning to fly. After fledgling, the parents care for their offspring some 3 more weeks, until the close family bond separates in late summer or early fall, and the birds gather in larger groups on rich feeding grounds in preparation for the migration to the winter quarters. They migrate south by September or October. Predation. Occasionally, these pelicans may nest in colonies on isolated islands, which is believed to significantly reduce the likelihood of mammalian predation. Red foxes and coyotes readily predate colonies that they can access, the latter being the only known species to hunt adult pelicans. Several gulls have been known to predate pelican eggs and nestlings, as well as common ravens. Young pelicans may be hunted by great horned owls, red-tailed hawks, bald eagles, and golden eagles. The pelicans react to mammalian threats differently from avian threats. Though fairly approachable while feeding, the pelicans may temporarily abandon the nests if a human or other large mammal closely approaches the colony. If the threat is another bird, however, the pelicans do not abandon the nest and may fight off the interloper by jabbing at them with the considerable bills. Status and conservation. This species is protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918. It has the California Department of Fish and Game protective status. California species of special concern. On a global scale, however, the species is common enough to qualify as a species of least concern according to the IUCN. Habitat loss is the largest known cause of nesting failure, with flooding and drought being recurrent problems. Human-related losses include entanglement in fishing gear, boating disturbance and poaching, as well as additional habitat degradation. There was a pronounced decline in American white pelican numbers in the mid-20th century, attributable to the excessive spraying of DDT, endron and other organochlorides in agriculture, as well as widespread draining and pollution of wetlands. Bird populations have recovered well after stricter environmental protection laws came into effect, and are stable or slightly increasing today. By the 1980s, more than 100,000 adult American white pelicans were estimated to exist in the wild, with 33,000 nests altogether in the 50 colonies in Canada, and 18,500 nests in the 14 to 17 United States colonies. Shoreline erosion at breeding colonies remains a problem in some cases, as are the occasional mass poisonings when pesticides are used near breeding or wintering sites.